We are live on the Our Football Network on ProLine TV. Thanks for tuning in to another look at the NFL offseason as we take a look at the Indianapolis Colts. And that means our boy Kent Sterling is joining us from the Kent Sterling YouTube channel. How's it going, Kent?
It's going good, Greg. How are you?
Doing good. So this is sort of like, in a way, the end of the offseason, if there ever is an end. Most of the free agents are gone. Well, most of the good ones. There's still a few out there, and I'm sure the ones that usually are out there are usually waiting for injuries or the right championship team to kind of hang on their hopes to that they're going to be signed. But before we get into everything, just generally, and I know we have to talk obviously about the sudden news that really shook the NFL world in the last week regarding the Colts owner. How was the offseason in general for the Colts? Did the fans generally enjoy the offseason?
You know, it was a little bit different this year because there's some free agent signings, and that's not a pool that Chris Ballard jumps into easily or often. And so getting a guy like Mooney Ward and getting Cam Bynum, you knew you had to get a quarterback. So Daniel Jones, that wasn't a surprise, but getting Mooney and then Cam, that was kind of good news for Colts fans. And so I think we enjoyed this offseason maybe a little bit more than we have many others.
Yeah, and you can go to ourlads.com. They have a really good free agent tracker now, so you can check out all the players from the Colts who either left the team or players that have been added to the team. Because that is something that we talked about, is that maybe Ballard, had to feel that this was a new life, and he should try to do something a little bit different this offseason, meaning maybe sign a few players that he maybe normally wouldn't. So,
well, if you venture down the same road again and again and again, and you continue to believe that it's going to lead you to a different destination, the map's not the problem.
No, not at all. So we're going to get into some of the players that were added for free agency and, of course, how that affected the draft. We're also going to take a look at the 2025 schedule. But before we go ahead and do that, how shocking was it to you? I know it's you follow the Colts, obviously, so it's your team, it's your owner. You know everything more than most people about what's gone on with this owner over his career. There's been a lot of ups and downs, maybe to put it mildly. So how surprised were you when you heard the news?
I wasn't surprised at all. Jim Irsay has battled demons for most of his adult life. And those demons were hard for him to vanquish because he deals with great pain, or dealt with great pain. And for him, the way to deal with that pain, he tried surgeries and then, relied on pharmaceuticals. And the pharmaceuticals became habitual. And you can't do that for long. Although he did, you can't keep going back to that well and then not at some point pay for it. And he finally did.
So was it one of those things where because he had the resources, you think? I often think about, because look, when I was younger, I took drugs. It wasn't unusual. I never shot up or did anything heavy, but I was just your regular, drug user, smoking, things of that nature. And I always thought to myself, well, if I was older, and I'm still getting there, but if I was older and I had the resources and I had some ailments, why wouldn't I take certain drugs? Yeah. What would I care? I mean, I just want to feel good. That's the main thing. And if I had the resources so was that sort of some of that, or was it more of just he was that type of an addict and the addiction was really more of the issue, as opposed to, hey, I have an issue, I have a some sort of a health issue and I want to mask that with drugs?
I think it was two tracks. I think one was the pain and one was that he became an addict, and that won in the end. He's got a family history of addiction. His dad, his alcoholism is pretty well chronicled. And Jim kind of went down that road, went to rehab by his reckoning at least 15 times and tried to figure a way out from it. And it just it didn't take, and that took him in the end.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And I know exactly what you're saying, because my family, I knew at some point, then maybe when I was about 17 or 18 years old, that I had some, like, I knew that whatever it was, whether it was a little bit of alcohol or a little bit of drug use, it made me feel, it relaxed me. And I always felt, well, that's interesting, because I looked at my family history and realized that my grandmother was an alcoholic. And I knew that there was some of that on both sides of the family. And I knew that even some of I knew my brother constantly needed to medicate. And so it got to a point when you get older and you start to realize these things. It's like, that's something to deal with based on your family history.
Yeah.
And then, but at least you have to educate yourself, and somewhere that has to stop. And hopefully that has happened. I mean, his daughters are going to take over the football team. Has that stopped? Do you see any of that, with his children or anywhere near there? Because I'm assuming that's not the case, because I haven't heard anything.
I haven't heard a word about that.
That's great.
But, like Carly Irsay Gordon is going to take over the football end of things. And she is not, I think it's fair to say that she is not social in the way that Jim Irsay was early on when he came to Indianapolis. Very social guy, liked getting to know people. There are people who have been with the Indianapolis Colts for a long time who have never met Carly Irsay Gordon.
Wow.
So she's not somebody who's running around the building, giving people hugs, getting to know their lives.
Okay.
And so I think there are more things that we don't know about Carly than things that we do know at this point. But I've heard nothing about the three daughters where it comes to drug use or anything like that. And I think, they're all lifelong Indianapolis residents for the most part. And Indy's a small enough town that
you would know. Yeah. So that's great. That's because, again, it's got to stop somewhere. Right. And that's great to know that that's possibly what's happening. So how are the fans taking to this new change? I know it's soon. Nothing's really happened yet to find out how good this new ownership change is going to reflect the football team. But are the fans, is it too soon? Or do you hear anything regarding the fans with your community and your viewers where they're a little bit nervous?
I think there's some nerves, and I think the nerves are well invested because we don't know. We don't know how, for instance, the Colts lease with Lucas Oil Stadium, they can exert an exit clause in 2032 that would allow them to leave Indianapolis in 2034. So that, 7 years seems like a long time when you're in your 20s. For me, it seems like 7 years ago seems like yesterday. 2018 was not a long time ago. 2032 is not going to be a long time from now. And so I think a new lease and a renovation to Lucas Oil Stadium has to be negotiated. And I think the sooner the better. And we haven't heard enough from Carly Irsay Gordon to know exactly how dug in she is to Indianapolis, or whether she would entertain maybe an overture from a team like the Bears, who are looking to build a new stadium in Chicago and would like to kind of follow the blueprint set by Stan Kroenke in LA, where he got the Spanos family to come from, San Diego and be a co-tenant to SoFi Stadium. That's got to be pretty attractive to the McCaskey family up in Chicago. And so, you hope that she's kind of dug in. She understands that Indianapolis is the best place for her franchise, and that the city and county and state understand that the Colts are a really significant part of our culture and our society here.
And the Colts do have a good relationship, the football team, within the politics of the community.
They always have, but even with the build of Lucas Oil Stadium, Bart Peterson was the mayor when that thing was negotiated, and Jim Irsay, the principal owner, and they had a tough time getting together. So a guy named Jeff Simoleon, who was actually my boss at MS Communications, he had to kind of broker the peace, and he was taking calls at midnight from Jim and calls from Bart and trying to cobble together this deal that became, palatable for both sides and really kind of got that thing done. We'll see. Sometimes those negotiations don't work really well. Talking about Kroenke and the city of St. Louis and the county of St. Louis and all the municipalities within St. Louis County. and Missouri, whose capital's in Jeff City, and then you've got Illinois as part of the market. You had a lot of complications in St. Louis, and then the St. Louis Sports Commission kind of lowballed, said, the Jonestone's going to be fine with $125 million in renovations, and Kroenke kind of like, all right, we're wheels up.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of that simple.
How's the stadium?
It's great.
It's great. So the stadium is great. Nothing wrong
Held
with it.
up really, really well. It's got the square footage is plenty enough to monetize. And I think that Indianapolis and the Colts kind of built it, not on the cheap, because I think it's a really well put together stadium. But that stadium cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $725 to $750 million. And now with SoFi being a $5 billion stadium, talking about $3 to $4 billion in Chicago, this thing for its use, I think is perfect. And it was affordable for this community and for that team. And so to that end, but I thought that about like Gainbridge Fieldhouse for the Pacers, and they just did a $350 million publicly funded renovation of that building. So it's not like Indianapolis and Indiana are going to, do the Colts dirty.
Sure.
They know how to build a stadium. They know what goes into a stadium or an arena. And I think they'll do right by the team, and hopefully the team does right by the city.
Okay, so let's now talk football, which is what we're here to do, most of it. And overall, the draft, taking a look at what we talked about, the needs. And of course, this was going into the free agency as well. And even though they made a few deals, it's interesting because as far as the draft was concerned, we looked at quarterback, edge, corner, running back, safety, tight end, all of them taken care of in the draft.
Yeah.
So hit it right on the head you did there, Kent. And even though the quarterback was number one, that really turned out to be one of the best picks for the Colts. This was an A grade for me, by the way. I thought the Colts had a tremendous draft. The draft in total. I thought, and Riley Leonard was a big part of that. Being able to get him, knowing exactly everything you spoke about regarding competition for Richardson, and it was serious competition, and to be able to get a quarterback that probably fits the dynamic of this of the offensive scheme and the way that the run with Richardson, Leonard, that type of athlete he is, I just thought was a strike of genius and luck to be able to get him where they did. So we can actually even start there. Again, everything that we've talked about with Richardson, this is no mystery to Colts fans. So how did the Colts fans take to Riley Leonard being on the team now, and how that's going to affect Richardson?
Colts fans have a history of rooting for the third string guy to become the starter. That happens everywhere. It happened for me when I was a Bears fan. You're like, Vince Evans, hey, Bob Avellini, hey, and I think Riley Leonard's kind of that guy. Chad Kelly was one of those guys here. Where everybody wanted Chad Kelly to be the starter. Riley Leonard, though, I think anybody who watched him in college, especially that first drive against Ohio State in the national championship game, you understand what kind of competitor he is, and that if he can kind of deliver the ball on time and on target, we're going to see him today. OTAs start today. So we get to see Riley Leonard a little bit this week and then next week and then minicamp. And I think that's going to be interesting to see. Like arm strength, I'm not too worried about arm strength, but his understanding of football might not be at the level it needs to be in order to be a really productive player. And so I want to see evidence that during the offseason, Steichen and Jim Bob Cooter and Cam Turner have been working with him and trying to advance his understanding of kind of, the calculus of NFL schematics. But I think really good. The more competitors you can go get in the 6th round and in 7th round, 5th round, the better. And I don't think there's any question about Riley Leonard and his ability to compete. And
that's actually been one of Ballard's strengths, as we know, and that's being able to draft and acquire contributors later in the draft. And by the way, Leonard, even though it's interesting, even though he had more college experience than Richardson, he's a few years younger than Richardson. He's not really an old player, Leonard.
Right.
You would have thought that he would have been a little bit older with all the experience he had, but he's at a good age. I guess he's going to turn 23 in September. But we didn't really talk about Daniel Jones, so maybe this is a good time to do that as well. So, because he's obviously a lot more ahead of the game than Leonard. So that's really the guy that is going to put Richardson on notice more than Leonard early on in the process. So what about Daniel Jones and whether or not you think he has a legitimate chance to start?
He has a legitimate chance. And he was asked about that. Shane Steichen was. And the acquisition of Jones and what is going to be the key priority for Shane in terms of evaluating these guys and deciding who should start. And he said, and he sort of meanders through his answers and really doesn't say much too often. He's a bit of a politician in that way. But with this answer, he just said consistency. I need to see consistency. And I think that was a shot across Anthony Richardson's bow. Because the one thing, Anthony Richardson, when you watch him practice or you watch him play, there are moments when you're like, holy hell, like nobody can do what we just saw this guy do. But then the next play is going to throw it to the other guys, or he's just going to miss the read entirely. And then you've got a guy like Daniel Jones, who's a little bit erratic, moves kind of well. He's sort of like what Anthony Richardson does as far as movement, but a little bit less so. And so he's able to be a mobile quarterback. And in that way, I think that no matter who gets a starting job, and I think it's going to be Richardson out the gate. I think he's going to be the week one starter. You're going to have a guy who can come in and run that same offense. And the Colts didn't have that last year. Joe Flacco cannot move at the level that Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones can. Yeah. And so those guys are similar enough that I think you're going to be able to run a lot of the same packages. And that's going to be helpful as they kind of move through this season, because I think both those guys at some point or another are going to wind up starting. Jones has a pretty complicated injury history, as does Anthony Richardson. And so expecting either of those guys to be able to maintain their health for an entire season, that might be a little bit optimistic.
I mean, just looking at the depth chart here at the quarterback position, where the Colts depth chart has been the last few years, I think the fans should be really excited about the depth. Now, again, whether any of these guys can turn out to be the man, that there's no guarantee there, but it's exciting enough. And again, like you said, I think it shows that they're doing something a little bit more, I guess, I don't know, correctly. Like you said, Flacco being the backup really didn't make any sense, considering he had no identity towards Richardson's game, but these guys do. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think this is it's going to be fun to follow. Okay, Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
When we were talking about the draft a couple months ago, and we were going over the possibilities of who to pick and all that, and we kind of laughed about, well, just imagine if Tyler Warren were available. How quickly the Colts would be excited and to be up there, giving him the card, and that's how quickly they'd be able to grab this kid, because how on earth would Tyler Warren be available for the Colts? But hey, it could happen. And just the fact that it did had to be just an amazing situation for the fans. I just can't imagine the tension about as Warren remained on the board and it got closer to the Colts pick. That just must have been a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And you thought the thing that I was worried about, even as you were waiting for the 13th pick to be announced, is that somebody was going to trade up to 13 and steal him before the Colts could get him at 14. But that they got him, and that the Bears, I don't think the Bears did a bad job in taking Colston Loveland. He might fit what they're going to do, maybe in their eyes, a little bit better.
Yes.
But Tyler Warren is exactly the right guy for the Colts, and that he lasted to be 14th and really be that tight end that is like the Colts for the last few years. They've had like a one tight end with four heads.
Yeah.
You know, and they had the blocking guy, they had the hands guy, they had the yak guy. They got lots of guys playing tight end, and they all played relatively equally. Now you got your guy.
Yep.
And because you've got a guy who can block, he can catch, he can run after the catch, he understands football at a high level, he has great athleticism, he has prototypical size. Man, you got to feel kind of like for the Colts the way that maybe the Raiders felt last year with Bowers.
Sure.
that you've got a guy that not only can be a functional kind of widget within your offense, but he can be a dynamic presence at a position where you haven't had one since Eric Ebron like 7 years ago. And that was a 1-year anomaly. This seems to be maybe a decade-long sort of guy who projects to do his job at a really high level and take pressure off everybody else. Take pressure off, like if he lines up on the left side, he takes pressure off Bernard Ryman at left tackle. He takes pressure off the wideouts, takes pressure off Downs, Pittman, and Pierce. Mitchell, maybe, takes pressure off Richardson, where Richardson he can make 2 reads and then check down to Warren in a way that he didn't feel comfortable with Mo Alley-Cox or Kylan Granson or any of those guys. I think this is outstanding and really kind of elevates that offense to a different level potentially.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that we know Richardson, as you said, is so erratic at this point in his career, but it's a lot easier, as we know, to throw to the tight end than it is the wide receiver.
Yep.
And so this gives him a weapon, and that's great. And, it sort of reminds me of sort of like the Quentin Nelson draft pick, just based on the players that are on this roster right now. It's like Tyler Warren, the Tyler Warren pick. And now I know the fans, it was a mixed reaction about taking a guard as early as they did. No, we get that. But the way it's turned out, I think that's the way I think it's going to turn out for the Colts with Warren as well. This is going to be one of those first-round picks, like you said, that's going to be around here for a long time and is going to be very, very successful. So,
and Josh Allen was taken immediately after Quentin Nelson. And while you didn't think that was a priority because Andrew Luck was still here,
that's true. Yeah.
In hindsight, it's not the prettiest selection that's ever been made. Although Quentin Nelson's going to be a Ring of Honor guy,
yes,
for the Colts. So, there is that. Okay.
So let's stick on offense because there were a couple of other picks, and in the order, the 4th-round pick, Jalen Travis. So this is a kid that played at Princeton for a few years, supposedly like a great community guy. Not that fans want to hear any of that kind of stuff. They want to hear, can a guy play football? And the thing is he's a little bit inexperienced because he only has 1 year of playing big-time ball with the Big 12, even though he has experience playing college football. But boy, this guy's got size. He's got some traits that I don't think that maybe the scouts were sure about until they got an opportunity to see him at the combine. So to get a kid like this, a Princeton guy that just turned to Iowa State for 1 year in round 4, tells you that, this kid's got some goods.
There's a high ceiling, there's a low floor for him. He's brilliant by all accounts. I mean, we talked to Tony Sperano Jr. last week, and he's like, hey, I can't even tell you what his major was at Princeton. And it was like somehow political, not archaeology, but something like that. And it was like 2 things that just kind of don't go together. And I think you have to be brilliant even to understand what the major
is. We forget about that when we say the Ivy League school, we forget about it's an Ivy League school. So just think about what you got to do to get into that school. So
exactly. And he is huge. He's 6'8". He's giant. And the unfair comparison, I think it's really unfair, is Zach Banner. Zach Banner in 2017 was a 4th-round pick out of USC, 6'8", similar size, 6'8", like 340, and he got cut before the season started. And so people are looking at this guy saying, oh, another Zach Banner. That's a little unfair. It's just that both are monolithic in their size, and Banner didn't wind up panning out. But I think that this winds up they're going to need a tackle sooner than later. Ryman becomes a free agent after this season, I believe, and Braden Smith is pushing 30. So they need a swing tackle who can come in and do some work, and they've got confidence in him.
Speaking of the swing tackle depth chart, Blake Freeland, has he put himself in a position to has only been around for a couple of years. So is there still hope that, he could be somebody down the line, or has he not shown enough so far?
The thing with Freeland is that as a rookie, he showed something, just like Bernard Ryman did. And then Ryman put on weight, and so he could he could plant himself and protect. And Freeland put on weight, and he lost foot speed. And so you wonder if the foot speed's going to come back after a year of, kind of refining the perfect size for him. He's a great kid. It was a good kind of a guy you could plug and play as a rookie. But last year, he really struggled with the reduced foot speed. We'll see. I think that's interesting. They better have confidence. We didn't ask Sperano about that, to our discredit. We should have, because Gonsalves is going to move inside and play right guard. And so without him as that swing tackle, Colts need somebody to plug and play. And if not Freeland, who?
Okay, running back is next. That's the other offensive player that they chose, DJ Giddens. And what specifically stood out about Giddens' traits that was important for the Colts to get him?
I think he's one of those guys that on a scale of 1 to 10, he's like a 7.5 to an 8 across the board. He's got nothing that he doesn't have eye-popping speed. He doesn't have eye-popping maneuverability. He's not an eye-popping kind of pass protector when he has to be. He's not an eye-popping receiver, but he does all of them relatively well. And Ballard's had success with a guy like this before, in Marlon Mack, who he drafted and did really good work for the Colts. I like Giddens a lot. Had a chance to talk to him in rookie minicamp, and he seemed like a guy who's got his head together really well. He understands what he doesn't know. He's just being a sponge, and he's sitting behind Jonathan Taylor and trying to learn all he can about being a professional and becoming a professional first, and then he gets to deploy his football skills. I like DJ Giddens a lot as a fifth-round guy. I think that's going to be a pick where in 2 years we look back on that and we go, yep, got that one right.
Okay. And what does that spell for this particular season? Because they did sign Herbert, who's a very talented kid, but some reason he just never was able to break through on the depth chart with the Bears, even though whenever he would play extensive time, he'd show promise. And then he goes to the Bengals, and it just never really worked out there late last season. So now the Colts grab him. Maybe now with training camp behind him and the opportunity there, do you think Herbert still has, is this like a really good shot? And maybe Herbert's one of his last chances to actually be a solid contributor for an NFL team.
The Colts like going 3 deep at running back. And so with Herbert and Giddens, I think that you've upgraded both, where Goodson and Sermon were in those roles in the last couple of previous years. I think those guys are going to be better in pass protection. I think they're going to be better receivers, and I think they're going to be more functional as backs, because Jonathan Taylor's a one-trick pony. Jonathan Taylor runs really, really well with the football. He's not a great receiver, and he's not a good blocker. And so you need a guy or guys who can do the blocking, can do the receiving, and be a threat on the ground running the football late in games, because late in games you need somebody who can do all three. And both these guys, both Giddens and I think with them and with Herbert, you wind up checking both boxes at a higher level than you did with Goodson and Sermon.
Are there, before we move over to defense, and it looks like they signed about 7 or 8 UDFAs after the draft.
Yeah.
Actually, the only one that, I know Bentley. I know Owen, because doing some research on him, even though he was a real, pretty undersized kid. But is there any of these UDFAs that you've heard anything promising about?
I kind of like Maximilian Mang, because he's huge, really big, just stands out. When you walk onto the field, when we were at rookie minicamp, we walked like your eyes just went to him. And I trust my eyes, because I have no reason not to. I've never been held accountable for my eyes being wrong. So in my mind, I know what I'm doing when I trust my eyes and they go to somebody. And Mang was just like big. He moves kind of well. He seems to have pretty good hands. I sort of like the guy, so I'm keeping my eye on him.
Okay. And none of these, you haven't heard anything. And again, we're going to get to some of the defensive guys, but none of these guys were given any sort of like big UDFA deals.
Well, they had one guy, and I'm spacing his name, that they signed with a pretty significant bonus.
Is he on offense or defense?
You know what? That's a great question. I think he was defensive.
Let's see. Yeah, it's unusual with all these players. A lot of these guys don't stick out for me. So
right.
That's unusual.
And you know what? I mean, really, as you look at
Jonathan Edwards.
Foster
he does.
Let's see.
The Tulane corner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he sticks out to me. I know that he was someone. I think he even played at the Senior Bowl, if I'm not mistaken.
If I were a UDFA and I had to pick a place where I was going to go and I had a chance to make a roster, this would maybe not be it. The Colts re-signed a bunch of guys. There aren't that many guys who left. The year before, they had nobody who left. They brought back all of their starters and brought back all of their specialists. And so, you know, as you look at the Colts, I think the mediocrity in their continuity is sort of a presence always.
Yeah.
And even though the Colts do tend to keep one UDFA a year or so, this is not the place I would have targeted if I were the agent for one. I'd counsel people not to sign, or would have this past off season, not to sign with the Colts.
Is that okay? All right. And is that also partly because of the fact that there's a lot, as again we said, Ballard has done a really good job of bringing in a lot of these fringe type of athletes, the ones that don't necessarily get drafted high, and so they're already loaded on this team. That let's not go there because there's already a ton of those guys. Let's go somewhere where they don't have a lot of those guys.
Right.
So
this
has something to do with it.
The bottom of the roster is really pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a shame that you don't win 12 or 13 games because the bottom of your roster guys are really, really good compared to the bottom of the roster guys on other teams.
Yep.
But Ballard does a really good job building the bottom of the roster. And that's what a UDFA is going to be. He's going to be a bottom of the roster guy or a practice squad guy. The good thing about the Colts is they will give those guys a chance. Like, you have to unearn trust here. They will trust you to play until you show them you can't. And so that's kind of a good thing, but I don't think it'd mitigate the fact that the rest of the roster is pretty well set for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, and that, by the way, that's another reason as you mentioned, as far as the way the roster is talent-wise, is that another big reason why the Warren pickup was so important, because the Colts really did need some more star players on the team.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like when people talk about the Cleveland move. Immediately, the first thing that I think of as a Brown fan after the draft is, hey, that's a great move in a way, because look at all they got out of this. They got a first-round pick next year. They could use that maybe to get a quarterback. And I can understand exactly everything they did. They still got a good player a few positions later. But then I look at the other thing and I go, yeah, but the problem with the Browns is not the fact that they have a loaded roster. They've done a great job loading their roster. That's not the problem. Number one, they need a quarterback. But number two, they don't have enough star players.
Right.
Travis Hunter was a star. They decided not to go that route. And sooner or later, you have to have star players on your team to win big games in the postseason.
You win with the top 8 guys on your roster. You know, and the Colts, the NFL.com listed their top 100 players last offseason. They'll do it again this year. The only player in the top 100 was actually ranked 100th for the Colts, and that was Zaire Franklin. And if Zaire Franklin is your best football player, you got a fundamental problem. And you're looking straight down the barrel of 8 and 9 at best, and that's where they wound up.
Okay, defense. We'll start up front on the edge because I'll call him JT2. So JT2, as a Big Ten guy, I said to myself, I know nobody's looking at him as a first-round pick, and I get it. And I know there are limitations, but I just think he's going to be a really good pro. There's some tweener in him, but I just think that he's got what it takes, and he's going to be a better player than I think people think.
Tui Moloau. I think I've been practicing until I got to talk to him and ask him how to pronounce his name.
That would be good. Yes.
But I think he's a really functional replacement for Dio Odangbo, who left via free agency. I think that Tui Moloau has a chance to be that guy. And he was really good. I mean, the thing that Indianapolis fans, like, we know Big Ten football. we watch Ohio State a lot. We watch Michigan a lot. IU, Purdue, obviously. We like Ohio State guys because they win. And this guy had a really nice year in getting after the quarterback. And so looking at him as a guy who can kind of fill that role, and they keep trying. I mean, with Kwity Paye in the first round and Latu in the first round, Taekwon Lewis in the second round, Dio Dangbo in the second round. I mean, they're taking their shots at edge guys, but they haven't cashed that ticket yet. Maybe this is the guy to do it. I hope that it is because, like you said, there are some positions where you need stars to produce like stars.
Yep.
And edge is really key to that defense working well. And Lou Anarumo, different defense, but the same need to get some pressure on the quarterback. And maybe this is a guy who can get that done at a level. And maybe Latu takes that second year leap.
Sure.
Like that happens with edges.
Yeah.
I think Kwity Paye, we know what Kwity Paye is. I know that we know what Taekwon Lewis is. Good to have him back. But you got to have guys who can put pressure on the quarterback at a high level and cause offensive coordinators and O-line coaches lost night's sleep. And I don't think that any of the guys who are coming back for the Colts do that.
Yeah, again, on paper, there does look like there's a good promise overall. Again, because those two guys you mentioned, this year's draft class, as well as Latu last year and Kwity Paye, obviously the interior, which is the stars of that group. So I think there's a lot of talent there. But in order to be a complete unit, like you said, the edge guys have got to step up to make it really that dangerous. And by the way, there were 4 Big Ten players drafted, including the first 3 picks. So interesting that you hit on that. Justin Walley. Actually, before we go to Walley, let's go to Tim Smith since he's on the defensive line. So he's a 6th-round pick, a huge guy, but seems to be one-dimensional, which is fine. Run guy, run stuffer. I'm assuming that's what they wanted out of him.
Yeah, and that's fine. You know what I mean? You've
6th round, yeah.
And Grover Stewart's aging a little bit, and Grover Stewart's a run stuffer, a guy who can occasionally get his hands on a quarterback, but not regularly. DeForest Buckner is more of that guy at the DT spot. But Tim Smith, I think, can come in and be a depth piece in a way that Raekwon Davis failed to be for this team. And, you know, like they've had guys the last couple of years, they like rotating their defense. They like going 2 deep, if not 3 deep, at defensive tackle and defensive end. And the guys that they've had, like Taven Bryant, was not that guy.
No.
And Raekwon was not that guy. Maybe Tim Smith can be. You know, if you spend 2 and more years starting at Alabama playing defensive tackle, you do something right. And I think that Tim Smith is one of those guys who's going to come in and with work ethic and some ability. He ain't going to be, you know, Aaron Donald, but he can come in, play defensive tackle, and be a guy who's not going to get you beat, who's not going to get like knocked off the ball, and all of a sudden you're giving up 25 yards to a running back. I don't think he's that guy.
Can the Northwestern kid take another step? Again, I'll leave it the pronunciation up to you.
It is what is it? Atamawa Adebore.
I believe that's it. Yes.
And so great kid. And what they like about him is his speed. But at that position, like you're going to be fast enough to almost make tackles. You know, ball carriers are always going to be faster than a defensive tackle. And while this is a really smart guy, and he has the highlight tape that you watch of him from Northwestern, he almost makes a bunch of plays. You know what I mean? It's like if you watched Latu's highlight tape at UCLA, he's making a bunch of plays.
Yeah. Big difference.
He is almost making the plays from a defensive tackle position because he's really, really fast compared to other defensive tackles, but not fast compared to, you know, tight ends and running backs and quarterbacks. So he's sort of that guy. He's fun to watch because he almost gets there.
Yeah, it says it right here. It doesn't always finish. But he was a 1st or 2nd round prospect by our lads, which is when we talked about it a couple of years ago, thought that this was a good bargain pick.
Yeah.
But hey, every guy develops differently. It's only been a couple of years now, so he still has time. Okay, so let's talk about another Big Ten guy with the third pick in round 3, and that is Justin Walley. Now, this is interesting because when I was going over the guys that I thought would be good value picks later in the draft, sleepers and so forth, I hit on Walley. I was like, that guy, I think that guy's going to be better than people think. I just didn't think he was going to go in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
And so, but again, when it's all said and done and you take a look at all the draft picks, I don't get into that as long as I think they've had a really good draft with other good players. And that's exactly what I thought about the Colts draft, which is why even though I thought the draft pick was a little high, it doesn't matter. He's on the team. That's really the main thing. And I think they got a good kid.
If they wind up being able to play, whether he's a 3rd rounder or 5th rounder is kind of beside the point. I agree with you. He is a kid, according to Lou Anarumo and the defensive guys. He's a kid who likes sticking his nose places where it doesn't always need to go.
Yes.
He's making tackles that cornerbacks don't always make.
Mm-hmm.
That is a really good thing, and that really attracted Anarumo. Maybe they feel like with Mooney Ward, they got a guy who can cover at an elite level and take away the A receiver. And then you put Walley and Walley, tell you the truth, is a guy that I always I think about Jalen Jones and I think about Juju Brents and haven't really given a lot of thought to Walley because I haven't seen him play in a Colts uniform yet. But maybe he's that guy. Like if you go nickel, maybe you could go nickel with 4 corners and 2 safeties and see how that looks for you and add kind of Walley as that sort of dual nickel guy along with Kenny Moore and see how that looks for you and get run support from Walley and get reasonable coverage out of Walley. He's got good ball skills. So, not elite level speed, but, I think I don't think it was a value pick at 3. But I think it's going to wind up being a pick that you look at and you say, okay, You know what? He did some good stuff for us.
Yeah, a little bit undersized, but that's where the potential nickel job comes in. And also, like you said, it's a nice combination of experience. He tackles well, like you said, gets his hand in the dirty areas, can be productive. 7 interceptions, I believe, in his career, over 30 pass breakups, something like that. And again, that's what I saw. And that's why I was like, hey, I saw that combination and saw Big Ten games. And I figured, because 6th round, 7th round, which what I was hearing was possible. I was like, come on, that's going to be a good value pick. So obviously the Colts thought he was going to be one of those good players too and didn't want to lose him.
And it gives you depth beyond Kenny Moore. And Kenny Moore is getting a little bit older. And it bears mention that Kenny was an undrafted free agent too when he signed with the Patriots and then gets cut and the Colts pick him up and got great value with him. I mean, he's a borderline Pro Bowl guy at nickel. And so you bring in a guy like Walley in case something, because they really didn't have any depth at that position. And so Walley does provide depth, like you said.
So do you think, because right here on this depth chart, we have it, Tucker has him as a backup outside guy. Do you believe he should be the number 1 backup nickel?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think he will be. And that, again, you're 5'10". And that, like with what they have had with Gus and prior to that, Eberflus, they always drafted tall, lanky, slow corners. Like, Juju Brents is a great example of that. He's tall, he's long, and he's slow. And comparatively, he's like, what was he, a 4.53 guy in the 40, 4.54. And so that was kind of the prototype for the Colts. And this is not that. And so you look at that and you don't know whether it's Anarumo or whether it's Ballard looking for a prototype nickel instead of breaking the mold for an outside.
And what do you think about the other signings in general? You mentioned Bynum already, but there's Bynum, there's Ward. Ballantyne, is he going to be more of a special teams guy?
Yeah, he is.
Okay. And so what do you think about adding both Bynum and Ward?
I think it's great because they needed to upgrade that secondary. And football is so complimentary. if you don't have a very good secondary, you're not going to have a great pass rush because guys can't cover for 3 seconds, and you need 3 seconds of coverage in order to allow the defensive end guys to get home. And so I think going out and getting a guy like Bynum and getting a guy like Mooney Ward, who had a bad year last year for the 49ers, I think due to some circumstances that are understandable, you've upgraded over whoever the opposite corner was, whether it was Dallas Flowers or whoever played over at that corner opposite Jalen Jones. And then you've upgraded over Julian Blackmon as well, who remains a free agent for a reason. He's got a shoulder injury. He tried at the end of the season. And I don't blame him for this. He's an elite level athlete, but he just couldn't stick his head in there and risk getting his shoulder popped again.
Yeah.
And so he couldn't tackle, although he tried. You just can't. I don't think you can win with a free safety like that.
Okay. Now we'll go to the final player, and that is a player that I guess normally we might have said, well, we're talking about DBs, so he should be in that discussion, and he should. But this is not a surprise that the Colts view him as a safety, as a linebacker, because of how big he was and how productive and a much better player he was in the box. So I really love this pick. Again, this is why I have an A for the Colts, to get him in the 7th round with his skills. It could play a variety of roles, but especially I just like the fact that they've already zeroed in on a position for him a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. And there's a lot to like about him.
Well, you know what? He plays real hard. He is a special teams ace. And the Colts lost Grant Stewart at that position, kind of a backup linebacker, and then a special teams guy who can really make plays and change field position with his ability to tackle and his ability to pop the ball loose. And I think Wohler is one of those guys. You talk to people with the Wisconsin program, and they swear by him. And that's the perfect 7th round pick for Ballard. Ballard's done very good work in the 7th round.
Oh, yeah.
Will Fries was a 7th rounder. Zaire Franklin was a 7th rounder. They've had 7th rounders over the years who wound up being very, very good football players. And so I think this is perhaps one of those guys. I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet, and we haven't seen any hitting of any kind, but I expect him to be that guy that Grant Stewart has been for the last couple of years. Good locker room guy, smart guy, and somebody who's really going to lay the wood to either ball carriers for an opposing offense or on special teams.
Do you think the linebacking room is in good shape overall, or is there still and I guess the other question is, what other holes, or is there a hole left now that the offseason is almost complete that you're a little bit unsure of going into the regular season?
Yeah, that's a hole. I don't know, like EJ Speed leaving, that's fine. You're not going to win a championship because EJ Speed is a starting linebacker on your team. But you got to fill that spot with somebody. And I don't know whether it's Jalen Carlisle. I don't know whether it's McGrone. I don't know whether it's Wolling. I don't know who that's going to be. But that is you talk about a wide open competition. I think that competition is absolutely wide open. And it wouldn't surprise me with one of the free agents who are left on the board someplace that the Colts go get a little bit of cover and raise the floor a little bit with that second linebacker.
And is there a specific trait they need out of that position?
I think you want speed.
Okay.
Like Zaire Franklin's not a good cover linebacker, so you need somebody who can run. EJ Speed was that. Grant Stewart was not, so Grant Stewart went to play someplace else. I think they need somebody who can cover a little bit, man up on tight ends, good tight ends, and find a way to win those battles. And I think that's an awful high bar. But I think you've got to find somebody who can cover. I think their run defense is going to be okay. But that pass defense, I think you need a linebacker to help on backs out of the backfield and then tight ends, crossers. You got to figure out what you're doing there. And EJ wasn't great at it. So I think you have some margin to win in that swap of EJ Speed for whoever takes that spot. Carlisle doesn't bother me, but I question whether he can stay healthy.
And is that like the main position on the entire team that you think is the biggest concern?
Well, it is. If you believe Sperano about Matt Gonsalves and Tanner Bortolini on the offensive line, and you just check both those boxes, then you really focus on linebacker. But I think at this point you're hoping that Bortolini's able to come in and take Ryan Kelly's spot and be there 17 games, and then at right guard that that Gonsalves can do the same thing with Will Fries now being with the Vikings as well. If that offensive line is solid, then linebacker is now the glaring hole.
At least you can see the vision when you spend high draft picks at those positions, and then those kids step into those roles. You have to have the faith that the scouting process is working. Unfortunately, at linebacker, that's not the case. And so that makes a lot of sense why that could wind up being the one hole left on the team. But like you said, we'll see whether or not they add anybody between now and training camp or the beginning of the season. Okay. By the way, before we wrap up here with the depth chart, anything else on special teams? Does everything look okay? I mean, what's the deal with the kicking game?
I love Spencer Schrader. I think he throughout camp last year and throughout practices, because we get to watch special teams practice. The guys are limbering up. We got to watch Schrader and Gay kick. Schrader was the better kicker every practice I saw, because I watched those guys. I can't tell what's going on when the other guys are stretching and doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'd rather watch somebody do something. So I spent a lot of time watching the kicking. Schrader hit the ball harder. You could hear it, and he hit the ball higher. And where Gay was kind of wobbly toward the uprights, Schrader was right down the middle. And I thought, you got to keep Schrader. But they signed Gay to that 4-year contract for a whole lot of money. And so you don't want to look like some kind of a moron keeping an undrafted free agent guy who came to football late and played at Notre Dame after being a soccer player. And all of a sudden you say, yeah, we're the highest paid kicker. We're going to let that guy go. And we're taking this guy. Jim Irsay would have thought you'd lost your mind. But I didn't think that there was any question that Schrader had the better foot. And so it didn't surprise me after watching Matt Gay kind of struggle again that they brought Schrader back, signed him to a fairly lucrative deal, and he's going to be the kicker and should be.
And so Trujillo, he's just there just to help push him a little bit, basically.
Hey, you know what, though? He hit 2 60-yard bombs in a game. So that's pretty good. Obviously he's got a strong leg. If you're going to bring in competition, bring in a guy who's done that. But we're starting today. We're going to see what he can do, see what Schrader can do. But I like Schrader. And he's a local guy. He's from Westfield, Indiana.
That helps.
That's the town where the Colts train. And I said, where are you staying? He said, I'm staying with friends. I got some friends who moved down after college. They've got an apartment. I'm just sleeping on the couch. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, that's a nice story. And now he just has to make the kicks.
Yeah, that's it. That's a really nice story.
All right, so let's close with the schedule. So what did you think? What hit the fans the most when the schedule came out?
There's only one game that Colts fans look to when the schedule comes out, and that's the opener, because the Colts have not won an opener since 2013.
Okay.
And so having a home opener that's outside the division against a team that maybe they should beat in the Dolphins, that was a big deal. And then they got week 2 against Denver, also in Indianapolis. So this could be the first time, and Denver's pretty good. I'm not throwing any shade at Denver, but you could go 2-0 for the first time since 2009, and that sparks some interest in the Indianapolis fan base. Then, like, if you're going to travel, going to Kansas City, I think that'd be awesome. Going to Pittsburgh would be awesome. Going to Berlin would be awesome to see the Colts play the Falcons. We always try to look for a road game to go to, and I think my wife's kind of landed, because she makes the decisions. She's landed on that Kansas City game, and so we'll go out there, drink some beer, eat some barbecue, and have a good time.
And you get to buy just before that too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you know what? I think the bye comes at a pretty good time. Obviously, coming off that trip to Germany, it's going to be important. But I think I don't think he won it too early. I don't think he won it too late. I think, week 11 kind of winds up being sort of the perfect spot for a bye. And so I kind of like to, although health is going to be critical because the schedule's backloaded. Like you've got 4 of the last 6 are against the Texans and the Jaguars. So you get the early AFC South games against the Titans, and then 4 of the last 6 being against the Texans and the Jags. You better be healthy for those games. And if the Jaguars and Texans aren't, you got a hell of a chance to win the AFC South.
And that's the thing, is that everybody is going to be predicting Houston. It's Houston, Houston, Houston. The AFC South is not very strong, but everybody will be looking for which team can be the team that if Houston struggles, or maybe there's a CJ Stroud injury, or is there just a team that can elevate themselves? Who's that going to be?
Yeah.
Do you feel that the Colts stand the best chance out of all those teams? Well, out of the other 2 teams to be that team?
As long as the Texans don't win more than 10, I think the Colts are going to win either 8 or 9. History kind of tells us that.
Yeah.
But they're a purely mediocre team. But if they get some breaks, and if this year of kind of off-season work to hone his craft, if they've gotten Anthony Richardson's attention and he's gone to work and he's figured out where to put his feet and where to put his shoulders to deliver the ball accurately, and he's not trying to throw balls like only Patrick Mahomes can, where he's kind of moving to his left and he's throwing to his right or vice versa, if he understands the limitations of his awesome athletic potential, I think he got a chance, because I think they do check boxes with the O-line, the D-line, secondary's better. They have a game-breaking running back. They've got a good set of receivers. Nobody great, but they are good receivers. There aren't a lot of holes on this roster. If Warren winds up being as good as we hope he's going to be, that offense can kind of get churning a little bit. And all of a sudden, instead of losing a game 24-21, you win it 28-24. And but that defense has got to be better. Like, you can't rank 28th in points against and be a competitive team in the NFL at the level that the Colts want to.
Well, because I think when you look at the Colts, as you said, there's enough talent on offense that it's just up now to the quarterback. That's what it is. It's up to the quarterback, and the quarterback has no excuses. And if they can get good quarterback play, then yes, why not? Especially in the AFC South. But that's it. They either do or they don't get good quarterback play, and that's going to be the deciding factor.
And that's true for probably 32 teams in the NFL.
And the good part is that at least they have the talent where there are a few teams that, if they like Tennessee, if they get good quarterback play, they're not going to the playoffs. They're not capable.
Right.
But the Colts different, if they get that, and they could even be dangerous too, because again, we know how talented Richardson is, and if you can just figure it out, that's going to be everything for the organization. Before I let you go, so the Niners, that's the only prime time game.
Yes.
Okay, and then the what was it? Germany? They're playing Atlanta.
And they could be flexed out of that.
Oh,
that's in that flex period of the schedule.
Oh, at the late in the season, it could still be even flexed. Oh, wait, that even though it's a Monday night game, they could be flexed out now. Okay,
I think so. Yeah.
So there may not be. So besides the Atlanta Germany game, it's possible that that's the only time the Colts will be seen on national TV.
And because life is all about my convenience, I'm kind of bummed that the Colts, like last year, I think in the initial schedule, they had 15 games at 1:00 in the afternoon. And that's right up my alley. This year, they play against the AFC West and the NFC West. So they've got 4 roadies that are going to start at 4:15 or 4:25, which is that kind of bums me out. But that's okay. Anything but a night game. Like, I host a weekday morning radio show. So I got to be up at like 5. So if kickoff is at 8:20, that game's over at 11:20. I do a post-game video. All of a sudden, I'm getting 3 hours of sleep. And
That's
the
not
radio
good.
show,
No.
show is kind of scattered, tell you the truth.
Isn't it funny? Because when you're younger, you love those primetime games. Oh, yeah, give me those primetime. And now that we're older, we got more things that we have, more responsibilities. It's like, oh, come on, man. I got to get up in the morning. I don't need these, especially when we're working in the industry, like you said.
Yeah.
It's one thing, too, that if you can go, well, I'll just go to sleep. I'll get up early. I'll watch the game on replay. But you can't do that because you got to talk about the post game once the game is over. So.
And if it's a home, you're there. You go to the locker room after.
Oh, yeah. Even longer.
You get in the car and drive home.
Yes.
And that's crazy. So, although this game is, I think it's in Indianapolis, right? The Niners game? I think it is. And that almost, doesn't happen a lot. We don't get a lot of home primetime games anymore. We used to get them all the time.
Why?
Well, we're just not very good.
Oh, okay.
And when Peyton was here, we were really good.
Yeah.
And so, they'd have the Colts and the Patriots on Monday night or whatever. But it's the world does not function. Roger Goodell does not issue schedules based on my convenience, which is unfortunate, but it's a fact.
Kent, great job as always. I appreciate it. And we're going to have links in the description of the on-demand portion of this video where you can check out everything Kent Sterling related. How often do you talk about the Colts during the offseason?
All the time.
All the time.
Something every day.
Okay. Well, that's what the fans want to hear.
Yeah.
It's the NFL. That's what we love about it.
And
all right, Kent.
We got the Pacers right now in the Eastern Conference.
That's right.
So we're leading Pacers, but there's always some kind of Colts content in there.
And you think a home team is finally going to win a game?
Nope.
No. Oh, Knicks win tonight.
5. I said Pacers in 5 from the jump, and I'm not backing off.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you think it's going to be – so Pacers are playing tonight at home?
They play tomorrow night in New York.
In New York. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're up 3-1.
They are.
Up 3-1.
They're going to close it out. They're the better team. So
yeah. Well, they finally won a home game, so that was important because somebody needed to do that. And when was Pacers finals? Has that happened?
It happened in 2000. They played against the Lakers, and I think they lost in 6.
Who was on the team back then?
Reggie.
Well, that was a Reggie team.
That was the last hurrah for like Reggie and Mark and the Davises and Rick Smits and Derek McKay, those guys.
How many years was that after they lost to the Bulls in the finals?
They lost to the Bulls in the Eastern Conference Finals in '98.
Oh, 2 years later, they went to the finals.
All-time great series.
Yeah. And then they went to the finals, but Reggie's never won a championship. Yeah.
Nope.
One of those
players.
players.
This year. I think they can beat the Thunder. We'll see.
Okay. Well, that could be a lot of fun. And anybody out there is a Pacer fan, you can check out the Kent Sterling YouTube channel. We're going to have the link to that description, as I said. And we look forward to talking to Kent right around training camp, preseason. That's when I really can't wait to talk to you, Kent, because that means it's football season again.
Right.
So appreciate your time as always, Kent.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
You got it.